I know we're all like, when a Magic player has a child, you think, oh, this is pretty dangerous. I mean, like, we probably shouldn't allow that. It's not safe, but... Hey, everybody. It's your boys, Elijah Samuelson.
And Spencer Cook.
And we're back with another episode of EDH
Another
Takes.
legit
I was trying to channel
episode.
my Michael D. Lynch there.
Yeah.
Because he's very charismatic, and I want to be like that.
What's the thing they say? Come back for the spice. every other Friday or whatever. Yeah.
Not anymore. They don't.
Yeah. My bad.
But yeah. Anyways, so we got a special topic here today, because if you guys don't know, I mean, we come up with stuff together, but it's not often that Spencer takes the reins on the topic idea.
I'll talk about anything, but I don't come up with the topic.
Because I'm kind of like that guy, like that. You ever have that friend that's like, oh, I'm the idea man, and they come up with like a bunch of ideas, but then never do any of the work, and then they act like they're contributing.
Base?
That's what I do here.
Hell yeah. Yeah, but go ahead.
So anyways, yeah, so this is something Spencer wanted to talk about. So you want to introduce it a little bit, Spencer?
Yeah, so the setup for this episode is a good friend of mine who is kind of getting into Magic, more so, playing some cards with his roommates and stuff like that. He asked me to build a deck for him based around just, something he wants. He wanted to make it a samurai deck because he really likes that lore and stuff, and he's like, Spencer, I'm not very good at building a deck. I don't really know what I'm doing. Maybe you could put a list together for me. And it got me thinking about, this topic that I've wanted to do for a long time, which is like how to build a deck, but this isn't like a deck building template like you've seen from, other podcasts and stuff. This is more like questions that go into helping yourself figure out how you want to build your deck. So the idea goes along with these lines is like there's like a couple steps you take when you're building a deck, and you ask yourself certain questions and when you answer them, it helps you make a deck that, is what you want it to be. Because I've definitely made decks where I built them, and they come together, but they don't feel like they do what I set out for them to do.
Yeah, I think this process is more about figuring out what you want to do and how you want to do it.
Exactly.
So yeah, we came up with a few steps, and there's going to be questions you ask yourself as you go through the steps.
Yep. And maybe, a lot of times when you're building a deck without thinking about these things, they may come up, but I think it's just a good to be aware of what options you have in deck building, because there are questions that you can ask yourself that will pull you in, diametrically opposed directions. And we'll get to that, coming up, I suppose.
Yeah, because like you were saying, I think a lot of other shows will have a deck building template, like the Command Zone especially kind of pioneered that. I think they were the first to really do that and say, maybe you should play 10 ramp sources, 10 card draw, 10 spot removal. My God, people are 10 plus spot removal is the template thing now.
Yeah. 15, 20.
Oh my God,
yeah.
It's obscene.
Maybe a little high for our britches, but that's not what we're doing today. We're not going to give you ratios or card types that you need to play. I mean, we will obviously recommend some of the obvious things, but
we'll mention some cards, but
yeah. So to start off, the first step in making a deck is to start with a deck idea, and what that means is, just as an example, it's probably best to go by examples. So, a deck idea could be, some concept for a deck. Maybe it is a permanent type. Maybe you want to make like an artifact deck. Maybe you want like a tribal deck. It can also be something a little bit more abstract. Like, I know people have done the classic women looking to the left deck. That is an idea. Mm-hmm. Eli, do you have any decks that are like built off of an idea versus like that's not as simple as like tribal or like a Enchantress theme or something?
Yeah, so I think you and I have this in common, where we're more likely to build off of a theme or something we want to do than to build off of the commander. So I have, most of my decks are kind of just like, I want to play a deck full of these big burly men, the Chumbo deck,
yeah.
Or I want to build a Boros Hate Bears deck.
Exactly.
And then, so I pick the theme, and then the commander is kind of just whatever facilitates that theme the best. And So that's how I think we would go about it. But at the same time, I think you could go from the angle of, oh, this commander looks really cool. I want to build a deck around that, and so that's the idea of it.
Yeah, some good examples other than what I've said that aren't just like card types is I know Josh Lee Kwai has his Tim deck. Commander Replay has his tap creature tribal deck. Mm-hmm. I didn't have this deck for a long time, but I made a River Hoopu tribal deck, which was based off of the creatures that had activated abilities that 4 or 5 mana draw a card, and it was based, not to go into it, but an idea of something that you want to do. But yeah, like you were saying, Eli, the idea of like picking a commander for that idea is actually our step 2. After you've got an idea for what you want, you need to pick a commander to facilitate your idea. And that can kind of be step 1. Like, your step 1 might be like, I want to play this commander. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, then these are
so they're kind of intertwined a little bit, but I think from our perspective, the commander is more of a secondary thought.
Yeah. Or it could be the primary thought, but you really should go back and think about what you want. You reevaluate, like, what am I, like, if you're like, oh, this commander's really cool, then you go back and be like, okay, what do I want to do? And then you kind of approach it from that level first. And you'd be like, okay, wait, is this commander still fit what I want to do?
Yeah, so, like, for me, the Boros Hate Bears deck, I had a mono-white deck that I felt just wasn't aggressive enough, and so I wanted to make a Boros deck with a similar, like, Hate Bear theme, so I thought, well, what are Hate Bears? They're usually 2-mana creatures with some kind of static ability that hampers your opponents. And I thought, what would be a good commander to facilitate this idea? And this was around the time that the Return to Ravnica.
Exactly.
I always forget the Ravnica Legions.
Allegiance.
And so they had Tajik Legion's Edge. And initially when he came out, I thought he was kind of shitty, but playing him in the Hate Bears deck, it's just consistently you're able to play a 2-mana Hate Bear on 2, and then turn 3 you play Tajik, and his Mentor ability actually sort of acts like a slow-acting Anthem onto your Hate Bears, and just gives them enough punch to actually be impactful in combat.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, you have that theme that you decide that you want to play, and then you're like, okay, this commander kind of works in a cool way with this theme to facilitate it somehow, or maybe even not facilitate it, but add to it, right?
Yeah.
Like, because it doesn't make the Hate Bears, like, more Hate Bears, but it does, like, make them bigger creatures, or, let you hit with them and stuff, so that's cool.
Yeah, because I think oftentimes the idea of picking your commander off the theme, people would think, well, I want to make this tribal deck, so I need to have a creature that either is the tribe or specifically does something with the tribe.
Yeah, so I think a good example of not going that direction is, so there's, so, that River Hoopu tribal I was talking about earlier, which, Azure Mage, Spectral Sailor, cards like that, right? The obvious, card for that would be Thrasios, right? Because Thrasios is that effect in the command zone. Like, the 4-mana draw a card, maybe put a land into play. But the angle I went with it was, so it's a bit of an abstract theme here, but, so the idea is, if you're playing, like, a Azure Mage, River Hoopu type card, you want to be holding up your mana on other people's turns to activate it. Maybe play like a untap all your lands, kind of like Wilderness Reclamation or Seaborn Muse kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So you can do it multiple times. And it got me to thinking, what's a cool way that I can, not spend my mana on my turn and hold up mana on my opponent's turns? And I decided to go with Kadena, Slinking Sorcerer, and play a morph kind of build, because Kadena allows you to play morph creatures for free, for 0 mana once a turn, and then you hold up your morph abilities, your unmorph abilities, whether they be counter spells, board wipes, value, something like that, and then you're able to, if it's not necessary, you can, just draw your cards with your Azure Mage effects. And that was the idea for a commander that facilitated something that I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So that's a really interesting, kind of way to approach it. I know, Eli, like you were saying a moment ago, we're not big fans of, like, I want to play a elf deck, so my commander has to be an elf, right? Like,
yeah.
Not necessarily tribal, but, like, I want to play an equipment deck, my commander has to care about equipments. That's not necessarily the case. You could play an equipment deck and have your commander just be a source of card draw through something else, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, probably my number one thing I think about when building a commander deck, aside from a select couple of decks I have, is what I want the mana curve to look like, and the commander plays a big part in that.
That is a big thing.
So I'll talk more about that in one of our later steps, but that informs a lot of my decision on what kind of commander I'm going to play. Because like in the Hate Bear deck, you have tons of 2-drops, so you can play a 2-drop on 2, or you can play 2-drops on 4.
Yeah.
But playing a 2-drop on 3 and then having an extra mana open, it just... I hate doing that. That feels really incredibly awkward to me, so...
Mm-hmm. Well, then, why don't we say we move on to the third step here, which... and you might disagree with the order of the steps and stuff like that, but whatever, it's just what we're going with. Mm-hmm. And the third step is decide how you want to win. And this, another way you can word this is, what is your game plan, I suppose? Some decks, they want to win through value, outvaluing your opponents. I believe Josh Lee Kwai coined this in one of his famous episodes as a boa constrictor deck or something like that.
Oh yeah, I remember
if you
that.
recall that. I'm not a big fan of that term, but the idea is you assemble some sort of engine or you outvalue your opponents until they don't have resources enough to deal with you. That's one way you can try to win. Another way is obviously some sort of infinite combo. Maybe a big mana spell that will, deal X damage each player. There's countless ways to win, but you need to come up with like something that your deck tries to do.
Just imagine you're going up to Josh at a Grand Prix and you want to play a game, and immediately he whips out the boa constrictor.
The boa constrictor and just starts strangling you in the venue. That'd be terrifying. So
I think the reason we put this in this order is I feel like your commander really can inform how you want to win, because for me, like, I have multiple decks where I feel like the win condition is just chipping in with the commander.
Like your Gisela deck, right?
Yeah, like especially in those boa constrictor value decks.
Yeah.
the value is in the deck.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't feel like I need to have that consistently in the command zone if it's redundant enough within my 99.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have a win condition out of my command zone.
And I know your feather deck, Eli, like it is kind of similar in that, where it's like a value, like out resource and kind of like out tempo your opponents kind of thing. But the way that you end up winning in that deck eventually is just being able to, your Perforos kind of things, right? Where like you end up getting to a point where you get that ability to just kill people over time because they can't stop you enough.
Yeah, or the odd infinite combo, and I gotta confess, I don't play very many combo decks, but that's kind of one of them, and I think that's facilitated because it's a value deck, and you're just able to draw into combo pieces easier.
Yeah. And
there's a couple tutors, but that's not really like the point of it.
Yeah, so maybe your game plan is I want to Voltron commander damage people down, or maybe your game plan is I'm just going to go wide, or maybe my game plan is do like a one-sided board wipe and try to get people dead or something like that. Whatever, it can be a lot of things that you're trying to do, but this is kind of where you decide your main win condition, and you can have multiple like ways that you can potentially win in your deck, but I think you probably want to think of like what's the main way you can win. So like, for example, my Anji deck, it's got two kind of main ways to win built into it. There are technically a couple other ways you can win, but the two main ways are, with sort of a Sir Conrad kind of, deal a million damage to people with Sir Conrad kind of effects. And the other way to win is a Living Death kind of thing with a card that gives haste to all my creatures, and I'm able to just attack with a bunch of like dumb madness creatures and kill people like that. Mm-hmm. So there's two main win cons in that deck that the whole deck is kind of built around. And so, yeah, that's kind of the approach I think you should take, or the approach that we like to take, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think this is something you decide based off of the first two steps, figuring out like what your deck is good at, or what resources your deck is good at generating. Like, if you have a deck that can generate a lot of mana and card advantage, then you're maybe not winning through creature damage. Or if you're playing a deck that, like the Hate Bear deck, that uses gets advantage through creatures on the board, your win condition is probably combat damage.
Yeah, or even like, if you're like, for example, your Hate Bear's deck gets chip damage in early, right? Maybe your win con could actually be like a little bit of burn at the end or something, or maybe one big like insurrection kind of effect. Not insurrection, but the 6-mana one I know you play in there. Mob roll. Just to be like, okay, you take 20 and now you're dead, right?
Yeah.
So it's, you kind of build your game plan around that. Well, what do you say we move on to the final step 4? And this is kind of a big one.
Yeah, the big one. So this is kind of similar to step 1, but getting more specific about it, I think.
Yeah. This is, what key things do you want to do, and at what point do you want to do them? And what that means is, just to use some of the decks we've been talking about as an example, your Hate Bearer Tajik deck wants to play a Hate Bear, and specifically you want to play a Hate Bear on turn 1 or 2. So that's the what thing do you want to do, and when do you want to do it?
Permission to be cringe.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to say the rhyme again.
Yeah?
So there's a play pattern that I really want to have happen in that deck, and it's 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, you drop. Because if you're able to run out like a turn 1, like a 2/1, or even like best case scenario like a Sarah Ascendant into a good like Hate Bearer 2 drop into Tajik, and then the next turn it's a lot of damage. Like it really it doesn't seem like it would be, but it's a
lot.
I think I've done the math before on like the best case scenario, like turn 4 damage, and with the nut draw, I think that actually might be possible.
It might be possible?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It might be possible to drop somebody.
Well, some other ideas of to kind of exemplify this, what things do you want to do and when you want to do them. Maybe I have decided that I want to make a kind of mid-rangey Scarab God deck, right? And what I want to do is I want to reanimate a creature with Scarab God. And when do I want to do it? Well, it's my Monday, I want it now. No, you want to do it as much as possible. So, that could be a thing that informs your decisions. Another one is maybe you want to blow up the board with Sarulf, the wolf commander from the Golgari commander. You want to, something you want to make sure happens in a game is, I want to blow up the board with Sarulf. That's something I want to do. Mm-hmm. So, and then one more is maybe you want to attack with a Rafik for, 20 damage or 10 damage or something, right?
And all the things we just listed there seem like very reasonable expectations. They're not, I want to combo out and win the game. I want to destroy my opponents.
Yeah.
It's just like one thing that's going to make you happy that you want to achieve. And like I said, it doesn't seem very complicated, but people are going to interact with you, and you want to be able to do your thing.
Yeah, like another example, just to, give another one, I suppose. Like the lieutenant commanders or creatures that do something when your commander's in play. I think that's lieutenant, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe you want to play a 2-mana commander and then play the 3-mana black or blue lieutenant commanders and trigger their ability on turn 3, whether that's draw a card or deal 3 to each opponent, right? Mm. And the reason that these small goals is important is because these will inform your deck building in the future. So, for example, if your goal, Eli, is to play a Hate Bear creature on turn 2 and then your commander on turn 3, doesn't seem like you're going to be playing 2-mana Mana Rocks, is it?
Oh, yeah.
So that's the big part of step 4, is once you've decided what you want to do, it lets you decide how you want to incorporate the important things of, mana ramp, card draw, stuff like that into your deck.
Yeah, and if your goal is very specific, that's okay, but I think it's probably
better to have a broad goal.
Going to lead you to a better experience if you have a broad goal that's easy to attain, like in the Tajik deck. The deck has so many Hate Bearers, and it has the commanders in the command zone. So for me to say I want to go 2-drop into Tajik, that's almost never not going to happen.
Yeah.
If I mulligan correctly, that's something that I can have happen every game and feel good.
Even something simple like I want to play my commander on turn. I want to play my 4-drop commander, right? Well, what that informs you is you play 2-mana ramp into your 4-drop commander on 3. That's a deck building thing to aim a goal. Or maybe you want to play a 2-mana commander on turn 2. It means you probably don't want to play as many or maybe even any 2-mana rocks, right? Mm-hmm. So, and you still can play 2-mana rocks and stuff. An example of this that I've used myself is I have a Tana and Ishai 4-color partners deck, and Tana is 4-mana green and red, and Ishai is 4-mana and white and blue. And I need to facilitate my deck in such a way where My goal is I want to play one of those on turn 3, right? So I can have my choice based on what the board's like, what my hand's like. And the way you do that is you got to make sure your mana's good. And the way I do that is I play a ton of signets, because the only way that you can like really have the option to play either of them on turn 3 is if you're able to do like, I mean, you could have, just really lucky with like your mana base, or signets do a really good job of filtering into, the mana you need. Mm-hmm. So that's just an idea for what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I know there's a little discourse about 2-mana ramp being a little like overrated lately, or like there's this video that maybe we'll reference sometimes, but I don't know if it was very popular. But remember that video we watched, Spencer, where the guy was like memeing on like, oh, turn 2 rock, turn 3 play my 4-mana commander, I win the game, and acting like that's how people see it, and that's not how we see it. It's just, it feels good. You do it because it feels good, and that's something you want to do. It's so clean too.
Like, what's more clean than Sakura Tribe Elder into Marin, right? Like, that's clean.
Oh my god,
that's so clean.
It's satisfying, and you feel good when it happens, and that can be one of your goals.
Yeah, and it's harder to count on like Soul Ring on turn 1 into something else on like turn 2 or 3, but something as easy as like 2-mana ramp into 4-drop commander on 3, like that, you can get that to happen over 50% of the time pretty easily.
Oh yeah, because if I'm playing, like I have 3-color decks where I have 4-mana commanders, and that's one of my goals, is to play them on turn 3. And like you were saying, you have your 4-color deck. If you're in 3 or 4 colors, you can play like 10 plus 2-mana mana rocks or ramp sources.
I think you have a 2-color deck that plays more than 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so I think maybe we'd take a moment and approach the different ways that you're able to mana ramp and card draw, because the one thing that you'll always hear about with deck building templates is mana ramp and card draw, mana ramp and card draw, mana ramp and card draw. And we're not so hipsters that we're going to be like, no, you don't need mana ramp and card draw. Like, obviously you do, right?
Yeah.
But like we were saying earlier, your goals in the game and your key things you want to do and when you want to do them does inform what type of mana ramp and what type of card draw you play in your deck, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, Eli, you don't really play much mana ramp in your Hate Bears Tajik deck, but the ones you play are of a style that fits more with the deck. So I think, for example, you have Legion's Landing in there, and I don't know if you have Curse of Opulence.
I have Curse of Opulence, Legion's Landing,
Ancient Tomb?
What's the
maybe not
the 2-drop that I don't have Ancient Tomb, but is it Storm? No, not the guy that gets counters and you remove 3 counters.
Yes,
to get
Kiln Artisan or something Artisan. I know what you're talking about. I'll put it on screen. Whatever the card's name is.
Yeah, I was just looking at the other. I don't know. I'm blanking on it right now, but it doesn't have very many though. It doesn't have like 10 cards like this.
Yeah,
to my recollection at least. Like I
made 3 or 4 maybe.
I make adjustments to the deck pretty often, but it's not something that it's not like I play one of these cards and I'm like, oh, I really need this mana to be able to play this thing on a certain turn. It's just like I play these cards because they're on the theme and they allow me to deploy more threats more quickly.
Yeah, another example of me doing this is I have a Cheville deck, and Cheville wants you to kill your opponent's creatures to draw cards, and I think a cool way for me to do that is to play Mana Dorks into Edict creatures. So I can, because Edict creatures will, end up killing up to 3 other opponent's creatures, and then also, your own creatures, maybe kill a Mana Dork, and maybe you play like Guardian Project stuff where you draw off it, or like Midnight Reaper, so you draw off your own creatures dying as well. Mm-hmm. So I do play a little bit of land ramp in there, but not really. Don't play 2-mana rocks. Don't play like too many like rampant growth effects. Play more Mana Dorks for that reason. So it's a cool thing.
Or like we both played decks with plenty of equipments, right?
Yeah.
The cool thing about an equipment deck and an equipment package is you can find equipments that will ramp you or equipments that will draw you cards.
Yeah.
So equipment tutors are just super awesome.
So in our equipment decks, I think you and I don't know your list exactly, but we don't really play as many mana rocks in those decks because the idea is you play your creature or on 1 or 2, and then you get the mana that you would normally get from Mana Rock on 3 off of like a Sword of the Animist. Right?
Yeah,
Something
you play
like that.
Sword of the Animist, Hearth and Home, Dousing Dagger.
Yeah, so many things. So let's just quickly just to list a couple things of the types of mana ramp, the different kinds of ways you can ramp in a game, like in different decks. We got Mana Dorks, We got mana rocks. We got land ramp, of course. You've got rituals. We talked about the last three. Maybe we want to talk about rituals for a second here.
I think it's much more rare that you want to play a deck with rituals, but I think there is a place for it. Like if you're playing a very explosive deck or the kind of deck that's capable of like refilling its hand really easily.
Yeah, or maybe like a Kess deck or something with flashbacks. You can do it multiple times.
Yeah.
Something like that, maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can do land-based ramp, meaning like lands that will generate multiple mana. So like Nykthos, Ancient Tomb, Cabal Coffers, maybe like Lotus Field kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, like for example, in my Thalia mono white deck, that's a deck where I'm not playing any mana rocks and next to no like ramp sources. Like I have some of the white ramp, like the ketchup ramp.
Yeah.
But I have this whole like kind of Weathered Wayfarer package where you tutor for something like Ancient Tomb or Nykthos or a Myriad Landscape.
Yeah, or even, I know you play like Lotus Field and stuff in there. What's the land that lets you turn it into a Thespian stage? You can turn it into a
Thespian stage.
So if you play a Lotus Field, then you turn your Thespian stage into a Lotus Field. That's like making it cap for 3 mana instead of 1. So that's something you can do.
So there's a lot of tricky stuff you can do with just your lands. I know that people really like to, especially our boy, friend of the show, Benny Smith, hates Temple of the False God. But I think Temple of the False God plays a very interesting role in Commander. Like if you're able to like look at it the right way and just add it as like an extra land in your deck. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things to do with, and this is a ramp package or like a ramp play pattern that you can do with just lands, is turn 3 activate your Myriad Landscape and the next turn play your Temple of the False God.
Yeah.
And you have 6 mana on turn 4.
With just lands. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I like
that's
that.
a fun, and then you play your Sun Titan with that 6 mana and get back the Myriad Landscape.
Very cool.
Done it like once or twice. It feels really good though.
Yeah. And then a couple more, not in a category, but a couple more creative ways to do ramp or mana. You can, maybe you're playing like a creature-based tokens deck, and you do like a Druid's Repository kind of thing to make mana to do ramp, or maybe like you do the Josh Lee Kwai. He's the only person that ever did this. He has coined the brought back kind of... Josh Lee Kwai did this on a command zone, and no one else had done it before. Hear me out here. You play a fetch land, then you play brought back, and it's like you're ramping in white. Oh my god. Crazy.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of whitelists lately of the...
that was a joke, by the way.
Doing that thing, what's the Foretell one?
Oh, what is it called?
Cosmic Intervention.
Yeah, that's a cool way to do stuff.
Yeah, so that's a new one. There's play with that, but I wanted to talk about Mana Dorks for a second, because you were talking about our friend that you might be making the deck for. I also have a deck idea that I'm throwing around, because I don't get to play a lot of 3-drops. So I was thinking I want to make this 5-color 3-drops deck. It's just like all the best 3-drops.
Yeah,
because I never get to play them. They're just they're weird on the curve, so they ick me out.
But you want to play them.
The 3 and 5 mana slots I consider them cringe. It's like a nails on a chalkboard thing.
Yeah, perfect.
But I'm thinking for that deck, I would want to play a lot of Mana Dorks, because those are the only, or one of the only ways that allow you to play a 3-drop on turn 2.
Yeah, Mana Dorks, or I suppose like the auras, the enchant lands.
Yeah, stuff like that. So I would want to play my 3-drop on turn 2 and then feel really good about it. That's like the only thing I would want to do.
Yeah, so that's good. And then maybe moving on from that a little bit, we talk about the big mama in the context of Commander, and that's card advantage. Within the context of what we've been talking about so far this episode, you're going to imagine, if you would guess, you'd say, we're going to talk about how the rest of your deck building, your commanders, your goals, whatever it is, informs how you want to fit card advantage into your deck, right? Mm-hmm. It's not always as simple as like every green deck wants to play Harmonize because it's a good, card draw spell or something, right? Or every blue deck wants to play Blue Sun Zenith. I think, your goals and how your deck ideas, steps 1, deck ideas, step 2, your commander, step 3, how you want to win, and step 4, what you want to do and when you want to do it, all influence what kind of card draw you put in your deck, right?
Yeah, I think the kind of cards you're playing in your deck and your commander really, it really makes it depend like how many game actions you're able to take based on like just what you play,
how many
out
cards
of your hand.
You have,
like out of your like starting 7 and your 1 card a turn. Like some decks are really gonna need like just a raw like card draw spell to kind of compensate.
So, like, for an example of maybe when you wouldn't want card draw is maybe my game plan and my goal is to play mono white Heliod, and my goal is there's 2 mono white Heliods, the original Heliod that spits out 2/1 clerics for 4 mana. Maybe my goal is that's like all I want to do. I just want to keep making cleric tokens. If that's the case, I don't want to spend 4 mana for a card draw spell. I want to make a cleric token, and that's what I'm going to spend my mana on. So in that case, with those very specific goals in mind, you probably wouldn't want to do the same card draw that, other players would do in most normal decks, right?
Yeah, or like I'm going to bring it back again, the Tajik deck. One of the ideas of that as an aggro deck is, I understand, as somebody who's played aggro for a long time, the weaknesses and the pitfalls of that. And one of the main weaknesses is getting blown out by a well-timed board wipe. So the idea of that deck is to pressure a board wipe by putting enough damage on the board that somebody has to board wipe you at a time where you're really not losing that many cards.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to pressure a board wipe by just playing like 2 low CMC creatures and my commander. And then turn like my 4-drops in that deck, or like anything over 4 mana, is either extremely impactful or something that doesn't get swept away in a board wipe. It's like Planeswalkers at 4 mana, or the gods that are indestructible.
Yeah, or I know you also play a nice package of lands that have activated abilities that do things that let you spend your mana without committing to the board.
Yeah.
So like War Room, or what are the lands that make
the castles?
Yeah, the castles and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like an example from me talking about this different kinds of ways that you can get card advantage or draw cards in your decks. I'm in the process of building a partner deck with Tevish Zot. And Tevish Zot has a minus ability. I think it's -1, maybe actually +1. I think it's actually +1, never mind.
Yeah.
It's a +1. +1 to sacrifice a creature and draw 2 cards, and if that sacrificed creature was a commander, you draw 3 cards instead. So if my game plan is to play Tevish Zot on turn 4, or, whatever, at some point in the game, the card advantage that I build into my deck, I might not even need to play like any or very much at all if my game plan is to have like a 1-drop or 2-drop creature that I can sacrifice and draw 2 cards. Like it really does inform your stuff informs your decisions. That's all I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, I mean we ran about this a lot, like commanders that give you card draw, and just how dumb that can be sometimes, because really like you can play that deck and probably not play any card advantage in your deck, and you're just like set.
And maybe you still do want to play some card advantage because the cards are just so good.
Responsibly, you should,
but you don't have to. Like if you play, like a Tevish Zot deck, maybe you get 10, extra slots in your deck for, small creatures that have cool abilities or something or maybe you could even play like a blue active treason effect, to steal someone's commander and then sacrifice it and draw 3 cards.
Yeah, I think one of the main ideas of this episode is having to build your deck off of a very specific template. I think it really restricts some of the cards that you allow yourself to play.
Yeah, you have more options than maybe you would think, which is really cool.
Because I think most people just want to play fun cards or things they enjoy, and if you're worried about playing 10 ramp spells and 10 card draw and 10 removal, you're losing so much space.
It is a good template though. Like if you don't know where to start and you just want to make a deck that functions, that's going to make sure your deck functions, right?
It'll get you there. And I'm of the opinion, like, when in doubt, always just play more card advantage.
Yeah.
Because that's going to allow you to do things.
But if you want to really dig deep into, like, oh, maybe this is a cool thing I can do, whatever, like, you really can take all these things into consideration and change, your if you want a challenge, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. Well, Eli, what do you say we talk a little bit more about these, I think we've written down some ways that you can draw cards in every color, just so, because this is such a big point of our topic, is like this card draw, like, or card advantage kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And people will say, like, what if my color doesn't have access to, multiple, like, interesting ways to draw cards? Well, we've looked at them all, and every color has a lot of ways to draw cards or otherwise generate card advantage.
Yeah, a lot of different ways depending on your strategy.
So I don't know how much you want to talk about each of these, but we'll at least list them, right?
Yeah. So first off, we got white. So white is mostly a creature color. So there's a lot of good, like, creature-based card draw. Like, we got all the creatures that enter the battlefield, draw a card. Now we just got a new one. So there's it's kind of like ties into the blink package and recursion package too
Yep.
of white, so those go hand in hand, but you can definitely do them separately too.
Yeah, so like, recruiter creatures and like, when things enter the battlefield, draw a card kind of things. You've also got like land tutoring, because you can get like the lands that will give you card advantage.
White is very good at drawing lands.
Yeah, so if you could do like war room kind of stuff, you can draw cards off that. Yeah, go ahead.
And then these are a little more specific, like if you want to do the equipment package, white can do that very well. It's got plenty of equipment tutors. Or white is also an enchantress color.
Yeah.
So if you're able to work in some kind of thing with auras, or if that's just what your plan is doing, you've got stuff like SRAM, Mace Enchantress.
Yeah, like if you're playing a like mono white or like white, whatever green, enchantment deck, you don't need to work very hard and do like creature things to get your card draw. You can do the enchantment things to get your card draw, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's maybe less of a variety of options in white,
but you got a solid 4 or 5.
But yeah, there's stuff you can do. And then blue, there's
a lot you can do a lot in blue, right?
Yeah. You don't need to ask. Like you don't, there's too much stuff. But we think depending on what your plan is,
you have different ways to approach it. So for example, one way that blue will end up drawing cards is drawing a lot of cards with one spell. So for example, if you're playing like a blue-green ramp deck, you might want to play like X spell draw cards, or something like a Seagate Restoration to draw several cards at once, right?
Yeah, this is like the big mana burst all at once draw. This is the perfect kind of draw for my mono blue deck, which is a deck that makes a bunch of soul rings.
Yeah, so when you have 12 mana, you can just be like, okay, I draw 6 cards, and then I still have some more mana to do other things, right?
Yep.
And then kind of contrary to that, you've got the drawing kind of one at a time when things happen.
Yeah, the incremental.
Yeah, the obvious being like Risic Study and stuff, but you also have like effects like Bident of Thassa or Coastal Piracy, like when you hit someone with a creature, you draw a card, or some win thing, draw a card, right?
Yeah,
the classic. Do you want to talk about the next couple, Eli?
Yeah, we've got the some pretty efficient and even multi-purpose sometimes card draw. Like I really like Mystic Confluence. You have the Thirst Cycle that like the 3 mana instant speed ones, but you have to discard a card type, otherwise you discard 2 cards.
Yeah.
Factor Fiction is a really good card advantage source, but also like it's insane in like graveyard decks.
Yeah, it feels so. These are like not like big card draw, not like one at a time, but they're just kind of like medium amounts, and they're like efficient and do something else as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and then you also have looting, which similar to red, like you can do a lot of cool stuff with like looting and then recursion. But yeah, you probably don't have to lean on looting.
It is an option, but
blue,
it's probably not a thing.
But it's probably pretty specific. But looting is always more efficient than just straight card draw.
Yeah, because it usually doesn't like you put a creature into play and it doesn't cost any mana from that point
yeah,
forward.
because looting is often not strict card advantage.
Yeah,
but it's definitely card velocity and selection. Mm-hmm. So I think that's
and you can get that. Yeah, you can get that off of like a Jace or something in your command zone, the 2 mana creature Jace.
Yeah, and then you got kind of similar to white, you've got a suite of creatures that come in and draw you 1 card in blue, and blue also can use the blink strategy with those cards.
Yeah.
So you've got stuff like like Trinket
Augur,
Mage,
yeah.
Augur Bolus.
Additionally, you also have like the creatures that will draw cards in other ways. So like Arcanist the Omnipotent, big 6 mana commander that will tap and draw cards. There's the Wizard one that you tap a wizard, draw a card. Mm-hmm. Mystic Archaeologist is kind of a cool card.
That's like your River Hoopu.
Yeah, River Hoopu, Spectral Sailor kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah,
and then they also have just some big dumb fatties that just draw so many cards.
The classic Consecrated Sphinx,
So I this is going to be kind of mean, but I knew somebody at the old Elemental Games game shop who was he had some really bad decks, but he had this funny, weird coincidence of just almost always having like a turn 1 Soul Ring or like turn 1 Mana Vault into a very early Consecrated Sphinx. And man, you can play a lot of shitty cards when you just drop an early Consecrated Sphinx. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's so many cards.
Honestly, a lot of Sphinxes kind of fall into that category too. It's kind of a theme for Sphinxes to draw multiple cards.
Yeah.
Jin Gitaxias too, yeah.
Yeah, that's another one. Jin Gitaxias is it's a lot of card advantage.
And then the last thing, there might be more that we're missing here, but the last thing we got is wheels. Blue's got some good wheels and stuff, so. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, again, like the looting thing, I feel like in blue. Like, wheels are very good, but it's something you don't have to rely on so much for your strict card advantage, because wheels are drawing your opponent's cards, so that's kind of the downside of it.
Usually wheels are, like maybe you might play that flashback wheel card, and your like idea is like you can entomb it into your graveyard or something, right? Mm-hmm. So,
and now we have my favorite card draw color, black.
Well, the thing with black is it feels like to some extent, it is one of the best card draw colors, if not the best. Like, you can draw... I mean, I don't know what other color lets you draw 40 cards for 3 mana, right?
Yeah, Necropotence is... It's got to be, like... I don't know, man. Like, do you think...
The most cards you can draw?
Like, you got a gun. You got 1 bullet. You got Necropotence and Rhystic Study.
Which one you kill?
Which one you shoot? Which one you put the bullet?
Well, it depends on a lot of things, but if I'm worried about someone, like, comboing off, like, they can see half their deck with Necropotence. So that is scary.
Yeah, it's an insane card.
So yeah, I'm gonna say that's our first, black theme is, like, enchantments that have either triggered abilities that draw cards or activate abilities that draw cards. So obviously Necropotence, like you said, Eli.
Yeah, you get a lot of people saying Phyrexian Arena isn't a good card anymore. I disagree with that. I think
it is a good card. I like it.
It's just it's very solid. Like it's a grindy card. But I believe in Commander as an attrition game and a resource accumulation game. So I get that if you top deck it like later in the game, it's not great. But that's the case with a lot of cards.
You've also got like effects like Greed, which will draw you cards. They've got several things that do that, like
Greed, Erebos.
What's the Phyrexian Reclamation, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's a way you can do it.
Yeah, you even just got straight spells that will draw you cards, like a Read the Bones or a Night's Whisper.
Yeah, Black's got these like efficient 2 to 3 mana spells that will draw cards and lose you life. And shout out to Dana Roach, big fan of he's a big fan of those effects, friend of the show.
Yep.
You've got a lot of black creatures that will draw on like an ETB or something like that, or they'll draw multiple cards or just one. Favorite of mine, not a really great card, but I kind of like it for personal reasons, for Phyrexian Gargantua.
Oh, yeah.
6 mana, 4/4 that draws 2 cards and enters the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of epic.
I love Disciple of Bolas.
Yeah.
That can draw an insane amount of cards, and it gains you life. It's a black card that doesn't make you lose life for its thing, so that's awesome. There's this whole, like, bunch of creatures that will say, like, whenever a creature dies, draw a card.
Yeah.
Like, what's the Morph one? That's one of the OGs.
Not Midnight Reaper. That one is... Yeah, so a lot of things that do that. And that also synergizes with, other things that aren't card draw that trigger when things die. So, for example, if you're playing, like, a Marin deck or something, or maybe some deck that wants to play, Dictate of Erebos or something like that, or a Grave Pact, like that probably might be a kind of card draw effect that they lean into, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we also have this whole category of, like, big spells that just draw a ton of cards or just have a huge impact. We got the bane of competitive EDH, Ad Nauseam.
And to some similar extent, Peer into the Abyss. I've seen that in some CDH decks as well. Yeah.
And then Bolas' Citadel.
Of course.
Oh, my God.
As for some worse cards, you've got, like, what is it? Damnable Pact or Demonic Pact or something? It's like... Black X, draw X cards, lose X life, or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
You got some random things like that. Those ones aren't usually as good as the blue ones, but you can do them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've also got, this is the last kind of thing, is tutors. If you have, like, 3 card draw spells in your black deck, and you have, like, 5 tutors, you really kind of have 8 card draw spells in your deck, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, black is really the only color that can tutor for anything, for the most part.
Yeah, because I think, like, Command Zone or anyone, like, most people will say a universal tutor represents any card in your deck plus the mana cost of the tutor.
Yeah. So if you demonic tutor for a Ad Nauseam and cast it, like, that's just, like, extra Ad Nauseam in your deck that costs 7 instead of 5, right?
Yeah, and I think there was a recent Command Zone where they were talking about, like, combo, and we had a discussion about this, how they were saying if you tutor, like, so many times, you're trying to win, but... I don't know. I think we're of we're in the kind of games where we might just like tutor for a card draw spell.
Yeah, they were saying stuff like if you're tutoring for a combo piece. And no, I don't really vibe with that mentality. I think in a lot of games, tutoring for some card advantage, or something like that is a play I'll make a lot.
Yeah, and I understand. We don't play a lot of combos, so like, but I even feel like if I was playing a combo deck and I have my demonic tutor on turn 2,
right?
Am I gonna like tutor for my combo piece without the other combo piece in my hand? Play the combo piece the next turn and then just like wait. Like that doesn't feel like a good play to
Bro,
me.
I play Anji and I tutor for Squee because it's an extra card every turn with Anji.
Yeah.
I do that.
Yeah, I get you, because like that card advantage like is more likely to get you over like a long game. I feel like it's more likely to get you both the pieces that you need rather than just having one random combo. I mean, that's also like assuming your combo piece isn't very good at that moment.
Sometimes the combo pieces are just great cards, and then then you just get them because they're amazing.
Right.
So that's the little bit of a push and pull there. But let's go into green real quick.
Regarded as the best card draw color by the greater community.
Maybe we have some disagreements with that. Maybe not. Who knows? But that's that's digressing at this point. So green does, like I mentioned earlier with the Mana Dork thing, green does a good job of. They've got these kind of two categories, and that's little creature draw and big creature draw.
Yeah, green goes wide or green goes tall.
Yep. So the little creature draw is like when you play a green creature, or when a creature enters the battlefield, you draw a card. Or maybe even the when this creature hits somebody, you draw a card. Stuff like that, right? Like the 3-mana creatures that do that or something.
Yeah.
Whereas the big creature draw is like draw a card for each green creature you control. Or sacrifice a green creature and draw equal to its power and discard.
Yeah, Greater Good and Rishkar's Expertise, I feel like, are the best versions of this, and they're insane.
Yeah, and you've also got the 6-mana creatures that will draw for each green creature when they come into play. Do you remember what those are called at all? There's a couple of them. There's two.
Yeah, the Regal Force and
something else, whatever it's called. So those are like your two main ways to draw cards with creatures in green, and those are usually the effects that people will draw with in green, right? Like those are like how people build their decks in green, honestly. But then you've also got like regrowth effects. I know you're kind of a fan of regrowth effects, Eli. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I have a Gruul Spellslinger deck, and there's plenty of card advantage in red, but it also has this whole theme like of regrowths and being able to replay your few card advantage spells or just like your really important spells. So something like Praetor's Council.
Yeah.
That's a huge card advantage card because it regrows your entire graveyard, and it is 8 mana, but it's just that card's or like a regrowth that gets back multiple things or even just the right thing. It's kind of like I don't know. It's an interesting form of card advantage, like being able to rummage away your stuff and then regrow it later.
It's on that same. I mean, it's not the same, but it kind of shares that with a tutor, where a regrowth turns into whatever effect you had in your graveyard. It can turn to that, whereas a tutor could turn to anything in your deck, right?
Yeah. So one of the things in that Gruul Spellslinger deck is I'm playing Harmonize, and just being able to regrow Harmonize or copy it with like a red fork spell.
Yeah. Another thing I think you do in there is what's the dredge? The dredge get 3 lands.
Oh yeah, so this is a pretty unique one. But so if you have Life from the Loam,
thank you,
and cycling lands, you can effectively it's not very mana efficient, but it's a really cool engine because both these cards are good on their own, but you can just keep Life from the Loaming back your cycling lands,
and then you cycle them away, and then eventually you get your Life from the Loam back, and then draw some extra cards.
Yeah, so I learned that from somebody at the old Elemental Games shop, and I thought that was a really cool thing. So I thought, well, I'm not playing traditional green card draw because I don't have big creatures or lots of creatures, so I'll do something like that.
Yeah, and talking about that, like traditional green card draw, like you and I, Eli, most of green's card draw is in the form of those creature effects, right?
Yeah.
But green does have a couple of like one-off card draw or like unique card draw effects that I think people will overblow and think like Harmonize kind of stuff, right? Harmonize was a color pie like Ben / Rake.
It was color shifted from the Future Sight set.
Green doesn't get those effects like that. The only two that I could come up with on short notice were Harmonize and Sylvan Library as ways to like draw a bunch of cards not related to like creatures or like on one card, not with like an engine.
Sylvan
right?
Library is a weird old ass card that is not something you would ever see.
They don't really print like Harmonize effects these days. Like it's really just those two as far as I know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know a ton about green. I don't know a lot of green cards, but as a white or a Boros player, you have to know your enemy.
Exactly.
And oftentimes that is a green deck. So I've taken to mostly playing like I'll play Alms Collector in a lot of decks because typically the green card draw is pretty reliant on something like a Rishkar's Expertise or a Greater Good.
And the ones that aren't, the ones that are like whenever a thing enters or something, those are removable, right? They're creatures that can die, or they're enchantments which can die. So, yeah. Okay. Also, we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but green does have that like hit people with creatures draw card effects.
Yep.
I like those. And then last we've got creature tutors. A lot of your green card draw spells are creatures, so creature tutors will get you them.
Yeah, like being able to tutor into a Regal Force.
Yeah.
Or not Regal Force.
Regal Force, right?
The one that draws a bunch of cards when it enters the battlefield, equal the number of green creatures you have.
That's Regal Force, I think.
Hopefully.
Hope so.
Something like that. I know what I'm thinking of, but I might have the name wrong. But anyways, yeah. So that's about it for green. I really don't think green holds a candle to blue and black.
Yeah, no, I think definitely blue and black are up top there. Green has some engine things it can do with creatures, but it's a little bit more fragile, I guess, in my opinion.
That's how I see it. I really think like the best answer to green card draw, I mean, less so with the like cast a creature, draw a card type of card, but the big draw, like the burst all at once draw.
Yeah.
You can spot remove their biggest creature.
But you can't...
Like, if they have multiple, then you're kind of boned, but...
Yeah.
You can answer that with, like, a Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about red next. And something interesting about red, I think, is that red really has the least, at least in my experience, has the least different kinds of card draw. Like, they have a lot of what they have. They have a lot of impulsive draw they've been making over the last 4 or 5 years, right?
Yeah, but I do feel like within each of these categories or subcategories we have in red, they're pretty broad in application.
Yeah.
Like, you could play them in probably most types of decks.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like red has a lot of impulsive card draw. They've also got, rummaging. Similar things to looting, I suppose, that we were talking about earlier.
Yep, they got really good rummaging.
Yep, graveyard effects, stuff like that turns into card advantage.
Wheels, which there's actually not that many of, but that is a very strong kind of card draw.
Around 5 or less, I think, of like ones that are really playable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got like the kind of unique, kind of like individual cards that aren't like others. So Humble Defector is one we love a lot.
Yeah, HumBD.
Cards like Underworld Breach are card draw, kind of.
It's a really good regrowth effect.
Yeah, multiple regrowths.
Very strong, yeah. A card I like, this is pretty specific, but Sunbird's Invocation is a really strong source of card advantage.
Yeah.
If you're able to chain off lots of spells or large spells, but it is a 6-mana enchantment, so probably not going to see a lot of play.
But, sometimes that can find its way in your deck if you're either maybe an enchantment deck or some deck that wants to maybe play big things, or I'm not entirely sure when. I mean, Sunbirds is a good card. I haven't put enough thought into figure out when I want to play it, but there are certainly decks that would want to play it.
Oh yeah,
confident.
That's one of the, we were talking about goals and things you want to do in a deck, and one of the goals of my Just Sell a deck is I want to put Sunbird's Invocation into play and generate massive amounts of value.
Yeah, and even tempo, I suppose, because you get the cast them for free. So yeah. Well, I think that's about what we have for the card draw, card advantage kind of like overview, I guess.
Yeah, so pick your card advantage based on what kind of deck you're building and what you think you need. Like, what's the CMC of this card draw? Like, what kind of commander do I have?
Exactly, and there really are so many options that you really can tailor it to what you're trying to do. That's kind of the main point we have here, I think. And then the last thing we have here to talk about in this sort of deck building, I don't want to use the word template, I suppose just suggestions, philosophy, is we want to share some deck building resources because, obviously when you're building a deck, you don't want to be on your own flipping through a binder or looking at, a pile of commons in a card store.
Yeah, you should know how to use the internet.
Yeah.
It's your friend.
I'd recommend it. obviously,
Well, Magic Twitter's not your friend.
Twitter,
that part of the internet's not going to help you that much.
They like you. They want you to think they're your friend, and then they get you. No, but like Gatherer or Scryfall, obviously, ways to search for cards. Mm-hmm. Probably the most important resource.
Yeah, I'm still trying to wean myself off of Gatherer because Scryfall is a vastly superior service.
Yeah, it's they even have the card images for me whenever I edit these videos, poggers. Mm-hmm. But obviously, would be remiss if is that the correct use of that word if we did not talk about EDHREC.
Oh yeah, EDHREC. Like as much as flack we give it, I use EDHREC when I'm looking at a new commander.
Yeah, any time I build a deck or think about building a deck, you check the EDHREC. It's another source of data you can use.
Yeah, because mostly what it's doing is it's pulling information from other sites and then just displaying that to you in an easily consumable way. Whereas, like we're going to mention here, deck hosting sites, you can like search your commander on something like Tapped Out or Architect.
Yeah.
And I think EDHREC is just a good way of showing you what those have, not necessarily Tapped Out, but you could do a bit of both because it's just hard to like look at an entire deck list and see like, what's this person playing in their deck? Because you don't want to just look at the entire thing necessarily, I think.
You could, and if you wanted to, you could be like, oh, I'm going to go look at, for example, I know Dana Roach has like his Architect like up to date with like his 400 decks that he has or something, right? You could literally go onto that Architect and you could look at all of his decks and see what kind of cards he plays. And you could look through that if you wanted to. It would be a little bit difficult. It would take some time. But you could use that to get ideas. Mm-hmm. So, and same with anybody. You could look at the Command Zone deck lists they have in their descriptions, for their Game Nights episodes, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I know a lot of Magic players are probably pretty big on trying to show how unique and clever they are, but I don't think there's ever anything wrong with getting a little help from outside sources.
Even like in-person sources, or even like online. Like talk to your friends if you have any. I know Magic players, like you and I, Eli, we don't have friends. But you know what I mean. Like, feel free to talk to people, even on, if you want to talk on like the public discourse in like, social media like Reddit or Facebook or, Twitter or something. Like, people will post stuff like, hey, I want some ideas, help me out.
Yeah, like I was joking earlier. If you go on like Magic Twitter and ask for suggestions for a deck, or like if you go on Reddit or something, there will be people who respond to you and try to give you suggestions, just because mostly I think
it's an ego thing.
It feels good to do that thing, like be like, oh, see, I thought of this that you did not think of, so this is cool, and sometimes that's going to be helpful.
People like sharing their knowledge, right? Like it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it's not helpful. Sometimes you disagree. Like how we disagree with everything. Ha ha ha. No. I think that's more or less what we got for a lot of this deck building talk, unless you have something else that I missed, Eli.
That is the process. That's a look behind the scenes.
So I think I'm going to try using this process when I build, that samurai deck for my friend that I was discussing earlier.
Yeah, and I'm going to see if I can put together my 5-color 3-drops deck, but 5-color decks are kind of expensive.
Yeah, they're hard to build.
I might have to get some new proxies, because I have a decent amount of fetch lands and shock lands and stuff, but they are in my decks. So.
And yep. Well, all right, Eli, what do you say we talk about something outside of the world of Magic? Or by that, I mean outside of the world of what we're talking about today in this discussion. Very epic.
Some news.
Still Magic, guys. I was just kidding. We're still talking about Magic.
Some hot news.
So, what do you want to talk about first, Eli?
Well, so, February 7th, my birthday, we got the February 2022 ban list update for Commander.
Yeah.
And so, rules, there were no changes. Cards banned or unbanned, no changes. And I think this is a really nice thing, because I think some people were a little concerned.
There was a really big... So it was... I think, Eli, we had talked about this in the past, and the big card that I think everyone was talking about was Dockside Extortionist. And I think we were like, like, not like whether we want it to be banned or not, but the odds of it getting banned, I think we were both on like, it's honestly like a 50-50. Like, I would not have been surprised if it got banned.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't... If you asked me a year ago if I thought something was going to get banned, I probably would have said no. But ever since the last couple of announcements.
The Golos ban?
It feels to me like the ban list changes have been more aggressive since the inception of the Commander Advisory Group.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they're responsible for that or anyone's to blame or that is even necessarily a bad thing. I think there's a lot of people that would say more aggressive bannings are a good thing.
Yeah.
But ever since the Golos ban, I just really feel like I don't know anymore. Because the Golos banning and the Worldfire unbanning was really something I don't think I could have guessed that.
So it was funny because we did our rules committee, or not rules, I think our Commander ban list episode or whatever.
How's the ban list work?
We did that episode like a month or something before the Golos ban, and one thing that we had discussed is, it seems like they haven't been banning things very much recently, or they take a lot, it takes a lot to ban something, and then we kind of got, kind of pie thrown in our face there when it kind of flipped the script like right away, like a month later.
Yeah, because I think we did that one after the Hull Breacher ban, and that's a card. I feel like most people, if you show them that card and you talk to them, get their opinion on it, they could be like, you know what, if I don't agree that this card should be banned, I can at least see the perspective of people thinking that it should be banned.
Yeah, or when they did the Flash Hulk ban, they banned. Yeah.
But the Golos and Worldfire, I was just like, I don't know anymore. I thought I knew. I don't know anymore.
Yeah, so that's why it's kind of unclear. We were kind of unsure about this ban list, what was going to happen, but yeah, no changes.
And Dockside Extortionist definitely, it fits the criteria of cards like Primeval Titan.
Yeah.
Where when it's played, it becomes that card that everyone either has to target or interact with in some way, or they want to steal it or reanimate it,
or
and
clone
it makes the game revolve around it.
Yeah.
And so that's a card I could definitely see as being in
the running for being banned, and the talk about it. Yeah.
But it has survived another ban announcement.
Eli, now that we know that Dockside is not banned, do you want to go into some conspiracy here real quick?
Well, so the assumption I think would be that since there's increased communication between the Rules Committee and Wizards of the Coast, that it's possible they know it's getting reprinted soon. And I don't think it would be a great look to reprint Dockside Extortionist as a rare or mythic rare in a future premium product.
If it got banned,
and then have it be banned, because then what's the value of it?
You don't play it in anything, literally nothing.
Yeah, is that even like a cube playable card?
No, I don't think it's in cubes.
Yeah, so what do you do with your Dockside Extortionist then?
So maybe that means we'll get a Dockside reprint soon if it didn't get banned, right?
Hopefully. I mean, can't say for certain, but
if it's going to be a part of the format, it definitely should get a reprint, though.
Definitely. It's what, $50+?
$50 or more, yeah.
It's insane.
Okay, well...
But yeah, the main thing we want to talk about here was there was some little controversy online and I think Reddit and Twitter a little bit, because people are a little apt to misinterpret people's actions and what they say. There was a paragraph in their announcement where they I'm going to read this paragraph, or at least summarize it here. It says, there are several cards which are popular topics of concern on the internet, such as Tegrid, God of Fright, Dockside Extortionist, and Thassa's Oracle, but none of them have reached problematic levels of play in our target demographic, which is games governed by a strong social contract.
And the reaction to this, specifically that target demographic part, the reaction from a lot of players that I saw on Twitter was, oh, what do you mean? The format isn't for me? I'm not the target demographic? Like, that was the initial, the gut reaction. And then, I think that's just ridiculous. Sheldon even had to make a clarifying tweet as to what that meant, even though it was pretty obvious, I think,
Sheldon
right?
tweeted, Commander's target demographic are players who are willing to take their opponent's enjoyment of the game into account when building / starting / playing games. Please note that this is independent of power level.
I mean, that seems pretty ubiquitous for just about every Commander player I can think of, right? It's a pretty low bar to take other players' enjoyment into account, even a little bit, while doing something,
yeah.
right?
I feel like
people do that.
The main concern people had was them saying the thing about a target demographic being people who are able to use a social contract strongly, or something like Rule 0, is people took that to mean you're saying the Rules Committee doesn't account for LGS play with strangers.
They were saying, like, the rules committee, oh, you're not even going to try to balance it because rule 0? That wasn't what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. That was a discourse I was not keen on, personally.
Yeah, and, I mean, I guess that's something that a lot of people have against the rules committee is, like, we had the episode talking about Rule 0 and how the idea of that and something like the social contract is used as kind of a
little bit of a shield, a buffer.
A catch-all, like a buffer against certain criticisms or decisions. But, I mean, as we talked about on our first episode of the year, like the thing the professor said, where Commander is just a broken format.
Yeah.
And it's just not going to work. You have to pretend that it works. And I think you kind of have to put some onus on the players to make it work, and you have to be able to have a certain level of empathy and understanding about what you think people will enjoy to have enjoyable games.
I think I would agree with all that, yeah.
Unless your number one goal is just winning all the time, in which case, if that's how you have your fun, like, and you're willing to be in situations where you don't care if other people are miserable, like, that's your fun.
That makes sense to me, though, what Sheldon was saying. It makes sense that their target demographic is not people who are necessarily trying to, like, cause the least enjoyment possible, right? Like, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, why would you balance the format with, like, for people that are not trying to, have people have fun?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So why don't we talk about the other big news in the Commander content creation sphere in the last couple weeks.
If you haven't noticed on the last couple episodes of the Command Zone podcast, our boy Jimothy, he has not been there. But why?
What happened to him?
I don't think they said anything on the podcast so far, but he had a baby.
He tweeted about it, yeah.
Congratulations, Jimmy.
Congratulations, Jimmy.
You're a father.
Good luck. Godspeed.
I know we're all like, when a Magic player has a child, you think, oh, this is pretty dangerous. I mean, like, we probably shouldn't allow that. It's not safe, but,
yeah.
Good for him. We'll see how it... No, really, yeah, nice for him. That's a nice thing. So hopefully we'll be back on the podcast.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get him
maternity leave or
hopefully
whatever.
Hopefully we'll get him back soon so we can get some goofs and gaffs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
We miss you, Jimmy boy.
Yeah, Josh has been having to take out his anger on people
Murph,
like Murph and
Jake
Jordan.
Boss and Jordan. Yeah, unfortunate.
But
I digress with that. So that's cool. Anything else that you want to discuss before we end the episode? Do you want to talk about? We didn't look at the cards yet, but just as we're doing this podcast, I think they released, unless it was fake, they released the Street Fighter commanders that just the Street Fighter crossover commanders.
Oh yeah, this Secret Lair Street Fighter. That's a thing happening soon.
I don't want to say too much about that, but do you think that? Just let's do predictions, if you're willing, Eli. Mm-hmm. A prediction that I want to get your answer on. Do you think there is going to be the same outrage for these, or similar outrage as there was for... I haven't looked at the cards yet, but for the Walking Dead Secret Lair, people being very upset at that?
So, we curate our Twitter feed pretty carefully, but I have seen nothing but positivity about it. It's getting to the point, like, the Stranger Things one came out. I didn't see any negativity about that. The Street Fighter's coming out. I've seen nothing but people getting excited about that.
So do you think we're past that?
I'm starting to wonder if the Walking Dead fiasco was the result of just Mitch being really upset about it from the Commander's Quarters, and then riling up, like, his fan base and part of his community, and then, like, making it seem like a bigger deal than it really was. Yeah, because I think since that, everyone has sort of been like, shut up, Mitch. Like, we're not listening to you anymore.
Yeah, from my recollection, Mitch was the really big guy in that, and also, like, I don't know how much of this crossover is there, but it was a lot of, like, Reddit.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know, if they're the same people or not, but so at least what we're seeing, and maybe players just haven't learned about, maybe they haven't figured out what to be mad about yet. So maybe we'll have a second wave of anger.
Yeah, we'll see.
I look forward to seeing it, but I also don't look forward to seeing it. But besides that, I mean, it's been a good year so far. I think. I mean, it's only been a month and a half, but I think things are going all right. We got a cool new set coming out. Actually, well, the pre-release happened last week, but the set should be coming out Kamigawa next week, right?
Yeah,
Friday.
I think this Friday.
Yeah. Excited to get some cards from there, I think.
I may be going back to the local game store for the first time in a long time.
Based?
We'll see. We'll see how the weather is, but...
Yeah, so let us know if you got any interesting things to say about our deck building ideas.
How do you go about your deck building process? Like, what are your steps? Like, what do you start with, and where do you end?
Yeah. Also, if you want to share about if you got something you're really excited about in Kamigawa, you can talk about that if you want. Whatever you want to talk about. We like talking about things, so we'll probably respond to you.
Yeah.
But anyway, this has been Spencer Cook.
Yeah, I've been Elijah Samuelson. Yeah, give us a follow on Twitter. Give us a subscribe, like, dislike, comment, absolutely. And we will be back later this month.